Welcome to Frequency Matters, the RF and Microwave Update Series. I'm Pat Hindle, and I'm here with my co-host Gary LaRude. In this episode, we thought we would continue our coverage of the February high-frequency components and PCBs issue. As we noted last time, there's a slew of 5G articles, as this will get additional distribution at Mobile World Congress, which is coming up shortly. The cover story is very interesting. It had new RF architecture approaches to 5G antenna front ends. So the first was by Gapwaves, and it's their waveguide approach for millimeter wave antenna front ends. And we also had one from MACOM for sub-6 gigahertz massive MIMO base station applications. And that's a highly integrated PCB approach. So those are good to check out.
Right.
And we covered the technical features last time, so let's take a look at products.
So product features, we have a couple of them. One from Skyworks on a couple of front-end modules for the License Assisted Access Service, LAA. And as you know, this allows the cellular network to tap into an unused Wi-Fi spectrum, the 5 gigahertz spectrum, to actually increase the data rate. Initially downlink, but it will also ultimately do uplink as well. So Skyworks has introduced two FEMs. One initially just covers the 5 gigahertz spectrum, and then the second one they add a 2.5 gigahertz or 2.4 gigahertz TR chipset so that it can handle the regular Wi-Fi and Bluetooth spectrum. And then our other product features from RFHIC, a 5 kilowatt, I did say kilowatt, a radar transmitter covering 5.6 to 5.7 gigahertz, and they actually achieve this power by combining 4 GaN power modules, so it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they've been working with some really high power stuff, and they do have that GaN on diamond process now, so that will enable them to do even higher powers.
Exactly. So how about tech briefs in the issue?
So for tech briefs, we had 3 of them. The first was a 3 to 10 watt solid state amplifier for K and Ka band applications, and that was from Exodus Advanced Communications. We also had a 1.8 meter commercial drive-away antenna from Norsat. And finally, we had a 24 gigahertz radar that can be programmed with Adreno or Raspberry Pi from Microrad, which is a company in Spain.
Yeah, I met the folks that are doing that when I was at European Microwave. It's a cool product. And they're not the only ones doing that.
True.
So, as you mentioned, Mobile World Congress is coming up, and one of the things we're expecting to see, a number of 5G phones will be announced, but one of our articles in the February issue by Ben Thomas of Qorvo points out that we shouldn't expect to see a global 5G phone in the near term because of the complexity with all the frequency bands and all the circuitry that's got to go into the standard form factor. It's likely that we'll see a bunch of regional phones before a global phone.
Yes, definitely is true. And speaking of Qorvo, they had a nice video that kind of gives an overview and outlook of 5G technology. So Eric Creviston, president of Qorvo Mobile Products, gave that. So let's take a look at that video now.
Qorvo is a leading RF supplier to all the major base station manufacturers, and we work with them to bring new technologies each generation. And I think in 5G in particular, we've got a key role to play. We're leaders in defense and aerospace, which gives us advanced technologies and millimeter wave applications. When we look at extending frequency ranges up higher and into the millimeter wave spectrum, you quickly get into phased array radar implementations so that you can form the energy into a beam to get as much distance as you can. When you do that, you have an array of power amplifiers and other RF parts in there to help steer the beam and, of course, and provide the power. It's all about getting as much performance as you can with as few elements as you can, and also doing it with the highest efficiency to keep the thermal dissipation from becoming a problem. And gallium nitride is ideally suited for these systems with its efficiency and frequency characteristics, and we see wide adoption of that in the infrastructure side of 5G. We're really still very early in the rollout of 5G. In reality, we're doing a lot of testing now here in 2019. There'll be some early handsets released with some capability. 2020 will be a more significant rollout, I think, in terms of broader reach of the infrastructure, as well as a lot more commercially available handsets for various regions. World Phone, I think, is some time off. And as you get into 2021 and 2022, as usual, you'll see the costs come down, and you'll see the adaptation rise as more of the phones and more of the mass tier begin to have this capability. And I think just generally when we look at 5G compared to previous standards, it has a lot of application beyond just more data, and I think that's driving a lot more industrial pull for this, and the industry seems to be driving quickly, and I think we'll see it come to market maybe at a faster pace than earlier generations.
Turning to news, at Mobile World Congress is coming up. In fact, you're catching a plane just after this shoot
Right.
today. There were a lot of releases leading up to the event, and Qualcomm had 4 already, and they released their X55 Snapdragon modem, so that's for 5G. But for us RF engineers, the more interesting is a millimeter wave module. So this is a 2nd generation millimeter wave modules for handsets, and it's now sleeker and covers more frequency ranges,
Right.
but it also has integrated adaptive antenna tuning and also envelope tracking. And what's really impressive is now they have 100 megahertz of envelope tracking bandwidth.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't long ago that we could only get 40, so 100 is very impressive. And they also had releases for case studies, and they're providing some test system facilities, so they're all over 5G at this event, definitely. And then turning to the test and measurement, Rohde and Schwartz had a couple announcements already. They announced a radio communications tester can be coupled with a shielding cube, so that will address the 5G millimeter wave applications, so for FR2 frequencies. They've already released one for FR1, so now they have a radio communications tester that covers all the 5G frequency ranges. And they had a second one that was a combination of LTE and 5G test system. And I think this is very wise of them,
Right.
because the first deployments are going to be non-standalone radios, so they're going to need to work with the LTE infrastructure. So this really covers that application. What did you see for some of the news?
So Xilinx has introduced actually 2 new generations of their Zinc UltraScale Plus RF system on a chip. You know that they introduced one, I think, a year ago or so. The generation 2 and 3 actually extends in generation 3 the bandwidth, the analog bandwidth, up to 6 gigahertz. So they can cover everything 6 gigahertz and below with this single chip, which includes analog to digital, digital to analog converters, and their FPGA technology. So it's basically a single chip software-defined radio. You can also use it for millimeter wave bands by doing block conversion, either up or down.
Right.
And then the second product, also introduced in time for Mobile World Congress, Keysight has introduced a dual-channel signal generator that covers up to 44 gigahertz. So it will cover all the 5G millimeter wave bands that have been defined at this point. One of the features of this is it has high output power. So understanding that over-the-air testing is difficult, you need higher output power to do that. So at 28 and 39 gigahertz, it will do 24 dBm output saturated, and it can do plus 10 dBm at both those frequencies with only 1% error vector magnitude. And anticipating the different use cases, Keysight has 2 versions of this. One is a benchtop unit with a touchscreen display. The other is a Pixie form factor, more for manufacturing.
Yeah, it was impressive that we released both at the same time. Usually
Right.
one lags the other.
Exactly. So we'll see that at Mobile World Congress next week.
Well, we have a lot to see when we're there.
That's right. In addition to that, we want to mention that EDICon is coming up right on the heels of Mobile World Congress, the 1st of April. You can register at ediconchina.com, and I think we'll have the technical program up shortly.
It is up right now.
Oh, is it? Okay, great. So that wraps up this episode. If we don't see you in Barcelona, we'll see you back here in a couple weeks. And we'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, Qorvo, and particularly for having Eric Creviston share his perspective on 5G. So until next time.